What does inner game mean to you personally?
I think in a game for me really comes down to how I feel about myself. So, how do I see myself and feel about myself in the world or environment around me? And I think even probably asking the other question, uh, do I care about the influence of people around me and how they make me feel about myself as well? Um, because I've known guys who can still be very confident and have a lot of belief in themselves, but still not get the greatest results um, with women. And then I've known guys who don't really believe in themselves, or they just have this image of themselves in a way that if they just literally just like tweaked this thought by like a single degree, then suddenly they could have like the best results in the world. And it kind of reminds me in a way of like with just some of the dating coaches when I've filmed them doing like their client transformations, and you've had guys who they have like no self-belief. They think so lowly about themselves, which is in a way is kind of why they've gone to a dating coach anyway in the first place, to help them, to show them or get them to see something that they weren't able to see before. And just literally by putting them in that environment that just challenges that limiting belief, and then suddenly they do end up meeting someone who genuinely does like them, even if the guy didn't have the best clothing on, or he uh he wasn't very fit or athletic or whatever, but just some like small experience that he's had that just shows him the potential that he could be. Yeah, I think that's what in a game means to me. Just like how you see yourself in the environment that you're in, and does the environment around you influence you in a positive or negative way?
Yeah, it sounds good actually. It is what it is. For me personally, I mean, if we're going to see what actually changed me in terms of inner game, I mean, I've been in this game for a long time. I mean, all the way back to David D'Angelo's time with W dating, to mystery, to Ross Jeffries, to yeah, all types of methodologies. But I was also studying at the university in the same time, and when I did my master's in communication and behavioral science, something came up to me over and over again, and that is the listening skills. If you want to influence people, if you really want to be good with people, you need to learn to listen. And I was thinking, like, okay, so I mean, I've done a lot of other types of inner game stuff where I've been focusing about me a lot, like how I feel and what is my limiting beliefs here and there. How can I work with them? How can I reframe them and so on? But the truth is, I was still the same person. If I go out and interact with people, if I go and talk with women, I will still be the same. Even though I'll be working with my history of things and my limited beliefs of things, I was still the same guy that couldn't really connect with people, couldn't really connect with women. But then over and over again, during my master thesis, all the master courses and modules I made, I started to pay attention to, like, okay, so if I want to be good with people, what is actually valid here then? Listening skills came up again. And once I start, you know, taking that part, listening skills, and implement it into my life, I noticed that when I interact with people to feel good with people around, it shouldn't be so much about me and my self-awareness. It should be about them. And I came across amazing quotes that have a lot of scientific backing. Quotes like, if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested towards the other person. You have to learn how to listen to understand, not listen to respond. And I start doing that. And I remember one time at work, I was working as a manager on the ship that time. And there was one guy that I couldn't speak with at all. We just didn't like each other. But one day he was sitting in the mess, and I was thinking that I'm going to give it a chance. So I just asked him, how have you been? And he said, good. And then now I remember, if I'm a good listener, I should actually explore what he means with things. When he said good, I don't really know what he meant. So I took that and asked him, when you say good, what do you mean? Bam. Suddenly, he started telling me that he's living in Brazil and he's pretty sad now because he has to go back to work on the ship. And then what I did there is, okay, I'm going to use something called conversational threading. I'm going to listen to what he said, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to ask more about it, a follow-up question. So, for example, he said Brazil. I took Brazil and asked him, okay, but tell me, when you're thinking about Brazil and living there, what are the really good stuff to do over there? That itself changed his whole mentality, his whole mood and everything. And he started talking about what he think about Brazil. He talked about why he went to Brazil. He talked what he liked to do that on his day-by-day basis. He told me what he liked to do that on vacations, on weekends, and so on. And he became so triggered about him expressing what he thought about Brazil to me, that it ended up with him inviting me to Brazil. He would stand for the living cost. He would show me around the city, and he would do, show me other cities, and he would do a lot for me if I come into Brazil to visit him. And now I came from not liking him and he not liking me to that area. That was a realization for me that, wow, if I could learn how to have real conversation with people and then really apply that as my go-to, like a new me, like a better version of me, and being myself more than ever before, maybe I can actually solve all those inner issues, because the results of influence, like making people happy, making people engaged, making people feel good, that made me feel good. So what happened if I use that with women? I started, and it worked amazingly, really amazingly. And from that point, it's basically solved all my inner game, also the inner game problems that I had. I feel like that part was what actually worked. Doing something that you know is going to give you great results, if that makes sense. Because all in all, we are all social beings. We're living in a social environment. We need to be able to have conversation with people. We need to learn how to communicate in a proper way. If we don't know that, of course, we're going to have a lot of issues, of course, with ourselves, how we position ourselves in the society, and so on.
Just imagine if society just didn't talk to each other, if everyone in society just had no fucking voice, the amount of chaos there would be. Like, based on the example you were giving, if we were left to our own thoughts, our thoughts could be intoxicated from external influences, and then that affects us. And if we're left alone with that, that can be very consequential. I don't know to what extent, but it's just like the bigger picture. If society had no communication at all, how crazy it would be, in a very dark, negative way. If ever, it's like anarchism, but very, very extreme. But that's just like a weird thought I had. As Patient Zero, as the originator of pickup artistry, Patient Zero.
Sounds like I'm an infection or a virus.
Pretty much. Let's disinfect. What does the term inner game mean to you personally?
I would say it's an awareness and choice about your beliefs, about who you are, what you deserve, and most importantly, your willingness to let your actions in the world, your bold actions in the world, rather than your guessing or your internal dialogue, be the architects of your life. So many guys are stuck in their internal dialogue. Now, it's not to say internal dialogue doesn't have a useful function and purpose. It does, but it's not going to give you social skills. You can have the best refrigerator in the world, but it's not going to take you from point A to point B. It's not designed to do that. And so this I'm going to use a big word, epistemological. Epistemology is the study in philosophy of how we claim to know things. How do we get information? Do we get it through revelation? Do we get it through intuition? Do we get it through going out and experimenting in the world? So taking on that mindset that you're going to let your experiments in the world that you do joyfully and that align with your vision and your values, and you do it boldly with detachment from the result. You become process oriented. These are huge shifts. No matter what activity of life you put through that process of doing things, you're going to tend to enjoy it and to learn quicker and to do better. And it's a courageous way to live. Otherwise, you're stuck. I really hate this expression, get out of your head, because we need our rational thought process to get things done. But I think where people make a big mistake is that epistemology, that picking the wrong one and even not even knowing that such a thing exists.
Interesting. Any other comments on what we discussed in the last few minutes?
Yeah, I have to, hat off to Ross Jeffrey here. So what I spoke before about the inner game, there are a certain way of evolving when it comes to your cognitive function. We now we're talking about being able to increase your cognitive flexibility and your cognitive engagement. And if we are going to learn the wrong stuff in the beginning, we will actually inhibit our cognitive flexibility. However, if we are going to be more social and have our brain open for learning about other people, to listen carefully, listening skills is a really hard one. So many people underestimate the difficulty of actually listen. But once you start being curious as a mindset and listen as a behavior, now you are in a fundamental base of actually increasing your cognitive engagement and flexibility over time through experience dependent plasticity. That is like a neuroscience, like when a complex mix of neurotransmitters that actually going to make you a smarter person. Your EQ is going to increase, or the conversational IQ, as we used to say in the communication faculty. So that is super important. Exactly what Ross Jeffries just mentioned. We have to learn to be social in the right direction in order to step by step getting better at our cognitive function, basically. And that is super important. If we go that route, everything can happen. If we go in the wrong route, we will be stupider instead. If we just going to go into the habituation area of learning a certain limited stuff over and over again, we're actually going to decrease our cognitive flexibility. And that is a big one, actually. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Alrighty, nice. Let's move on to the next one. How can we better identify and address toxic mindsets or practices in the pickup and dating coaching community?
Learn to meditate. The biggest shift and change I have seen in people is when they learn to create this compassionate witness, where they're able to look at their patterns rather than look through their patterns. It is a globalized, cross-contextual change in people. This is the biggest thing that you can learn to do. And later, I didn't do my meditation practice this morning. Things got in the way. I'll do it as soon as I'm done with some things this afternoon. But it's the single most important thing that I do.